Tonight, a mother speaking out after her teenage son was arrested accused of punching his teacher.
That high school student facing a judge today. Local 10's Cody Weddle has the details from West Miami-Dade.
This teacher says she was punched 3 times by this student, but we spoke to the student's mother and she is giving a different story. She claims her son and this teacher, they had clashed for years. And she also says in this instance, it was the teacher who lashed out first. 18-year-old Conley Williams walking out of jail on Friday evening. In bond court earlier in the day, Judge Mindy Glazier reading off the allegations against him.
Punched his teacher in the chest 2 times and punched her in the left arm.
According to his arrest report, Williams's punch to teacher Rewa Hill's left arm forced her to seek medical attention. Williams now faces a felony charge of battery on a school employee.
You need to be respectful to your teachers and keep your hands to yourself.
She grabbed him. She put her hands on him first. So why? She ain't get in trouble.
But Williams's mother, Darshima Pierce, says her son tells a different story. It started, she says, when the teacher at Miami Northwestern Senior High School scolded him for not greeting her.
Because he didn't tell her good morning. He said he went into class to speak to some people and the teacher grabbed him by his arm. And he turned around and grabbed the teacher.
Her son, who is special needs, was reacting to the teacher grabbing him, she claims.
If he say he jacked her up, that's jacked up. But punching, no punching. He get like very upset and emotional and stuff. And when he get like that, he have outbursts.
The school system saying in part the district goes to great lengths to promote our core values such as respect and responsibility, and we ask that parents help to reinforce these principles at home. So that bond court judge ordering Conley to stay away from this teacher. Police do say in the arrest report that there are multiple witnesses who, quote, support the statement from that teacher. We're in West Miami-Dade. I'm Cody Weddle.
Guys, I wanted to respond to the controversial news report. And what happened was that 18-year-old Conley Williams was arrested in the Miami area in Florida for assaulting his teacher. And then there are, multiple claims, but, it's claimed that he punched his teacher 2 times in the chest and 1 time in the arm. And there's another story, by what he told his mother and grandmother, that what happened was that the teacher grabbed him by his arm because he didn't say good morning to her. And then he got upset because, part of his mental health issues, possibly autism, is that, he doesn't like people putting his hands on him. And he got charged, and right now they did pretrial, and what happens with him is that he is not allowed to stay with the teacher. And I also saw the pretrial footage. It's also kind of really encouraged by the judge that he may be sent to, a different school, maybe a special needs school for his issues. So this brings up a lot of different talking points that, first of all, 100% that, there are people saying that, obviously, he has mental health issues and this is a bad situation for him because there are people with mental illness that, misbehave and jail may not be the right thing for it. For example, I work in a hospital, and sometimes you may have people with Alzheimer's or other forms of mental illness, or they may assault people, or you may have people with severe disabilities. And what happens is that they put them in restraints, but they may punch and hit people because they don't know what's going on really, So it's a weird one because I understand, it's a weird one because sometimes, it goes in the issue in our society. When does understanding and accommodation and right consequence meet holding people accountable for their actions? And we can't live in a world where people with disabilities get the disability get out of jail free card. And ultimately, I think that also, as I said, that there's definitely some ageism here because obviously a lot of times, I think we give passes to, people in their 50s and in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s when they have dementia and they do something like that. But it seems like everybody else, I think nowadays we're hoping to get to a world where we hold all people accountable. But I do think that importantly, yes, that I do think that no matter what, he needs to be held accountable because the problem is 2 things. That number one, we can't live in a world where if you have mental illness, you can go around slugging a teacher. There's also a huge issue in this society of children's behaving bad at school, mental health or no mental health issues. And there's also a huge issue of accommodation, where if somebody's mental health issue, we preach understanding and all that. But I think, honestly, nobody should come to work to be assaulted, and nobody should come to work being like, okay, special needs kids can, I'll run the school or run society, really, because there's so many, there's so many, accommodations and all that. So that's how I feel. I think he needs to be held accountable. And I'll talk to you about a couple of things. That I work in a psychiatric ward, and I've been in situations where, I've seen kids, with very severe disabilities, mental disabilities, and some people who may be mild, and some people who can clearly, learn good behavior. And what happens in psych wards is what they'll do is one of two things. If they're really young, they will put them in a quiet room. It's just like a closet type of room with a glass window, and they go in there until they calm down, really. The next thing that they'll do is that they're a little bit older. They'll take the kid, Conley Williams. Like, if he did this in a psych ward, you know what they'll do? They'll take him. They'll have a bunch of nurses pin him to the floor. They'll inject him with a sedative, and he would fall asleep, really. And then they'll restrain him to a bed. And then also there may or may not be charges, really. But the thing about it is, if that's what they do in psychiatric wards, and that's what they do nowadays, and I work in a psychiatric ward, part of Yale, really, and if that's what they do at Yale, and that's kind of considered one of the best, hospitals in the country, it kind of makes me say, okay, well, a kid misbehaving in school, putting charges on him is not as severe because I'm giving you more severe situations. But I do think that, that's all appropriate for him. He needs to face consequences for his actions, and if not, then we live in a world of people are allowed to do whatever the hell they want, really, if they have a disability. I don't mind sharing that, I've been fired from a job a few years ago, and there was a bunch of people that were saying that I was taken advantage of by my job, and there was a bunch of lies and manipulation, and there was no actual evidence. It was just, a bunch of hearsay and a couple other things. But, I recognize, the mistake that I made, no bad decisions I made, and I take accountability and responsibility. And, I've worked hard to atone. There's things I need to work on. But, there are a bunch of people saying that I was special needs and I should get a chance, really. And I was very happy that, I chose not to do that, really. My life turned out better. So, I think that children are better off with having disabilities, and they are held accountable for their actions. I'll give you another example that, when I was in high school, I had a bunch of bad trauma responding. I was bullied very deeply in middle school, and middle school I was told about my biological mother being very abusive and neglectful. And also, in my house, I came from some forms of domestic violence. When my little brother was misbehaved, my dad would flip out and throw furniture. My dad would use very verbally abusive language. Sometimes he would make fun of my mental health issues when I got in trouble. And check my watch. I gotta check my time. My brother's gonna be home in a couple minutes. But with all that said, I remember going to school every single day and cursing a lot or using abusive language. And I did that a couple of times. And I remember how some people said, okay, Byron's a disability. He doesn't understand what those words mean, so we got to give him a pass. And I also remember, one time there was a school assembly, and I shared some things about my life and why I was like that. But I lost control of my emotions, and it was a situation where people were laughing and chuckling at me because I went too far with what I was trying to say. And I remember, what my dad told me was the reason why the school didn't punish me is because my dad played the learning disability card. And then I remember, there was another incident after that, that I got Saturday 4-hour detention. And then there was another incident after that. I got a week suspension. And then, I didn't agree with it, but I was put on medication. But part of it was just because there was lies that were told about me by my parents. I remember I got a psychiatric evaluation, and one of the questions was, when you listen to music, do you think the song's made for you? I remember the psychiatric guy was saying, okay, well, Byron might have depression and response problem wrong with trauma, but my dad said something like, oh, well, Byron washes his hands too much. And then they put me on medication, really, because, my dad embellished, really. But, the point of it is that I didn't like that happening to me, and the suspension helped me and getting fired helped me, but also looking back at it and understanding that, obviously no matter what I've been through as a teenager, I got put on medication for a year and a half because of because of bad behavior, because I couldn't control myself. And even though, yes, it was, but there was some lies and there was some, exaggeration, and there was no really like analyzing, my father's, bad parenting style. I still had to be accountable for my actions, really, and that helped me out. And when I look back at it, I'm like, you know what, I put myself in situations where people had to, take care of me really in ways that I felt weren't right, really. But I learned the hard way that, there's consequences for my actions. I need to be held accountable. And that's kind of what a lot of people with disabilities need nowadays, is they need to be held accountable for their actions. That's going to help them become better people, because in the real world, it doesn't matter if this guy is somebody with a disability, not a disability, or if he gets a job program where he's monitored or not monitored. You can't go around assaulting people. And then the other thing too that I have to talk about is the parents. And I'll say this, that I'll jump into something really quick. The first thing is that we don't know the true story. There's a lot of people that say that they back what the teacher said, but yes, there could be a racial side. There could be a sense of, and that does happen with people with disabilities, that there's people that instigate them into misbehaving, really. And that could have been his situation, where he alleges that his teacher wanted him to say good morning and he didn't do it, and then his teacher grabs him by his arm, really. So sometimes that happens with kids with disabilities, where sometimes people will instigate them, or sometimes people will say, okay, you know what, I want extra manners from you. So it matters when you say good morning. It matters when you say please and thank you. It matters when you are told to, do extra chores. It matters when you swear and other things like that. And that's not right, really. If you, just expect other kids to do that. If not, then this person's being targeted. Another great example is that I used to work at Southern Connecticut State University. I remember my brother wore a shirt of somebody farting, and their shirt said free gas, and it was of somebody farting. And what happened was that the Special Olympics were there at Southern, and he was told to turn his shirt inside out and then not bring his shirt back to work, really, because everybody felt that was too inappropriate for the special needs kids. But my brother, who has special needs as well, really felt very mad about that, because, there's been people at Southern who've worn trench coats, have gotten spoken to. There's some people who've worn Confederate flags or have had Confederate flag bumper stickers. So you're mad about a fart joke t-shirt. And my brother's also special needs. So maybe what happened was that because my brother's special needs, they're like, okay, we're going to punish you extra, or we're going to give you more consequences, or we're going to kind of mother you or parent you. And like a parent would do, is say that's not appropriate for work, really. It isn't appropriate for work. But other people have done more offensive things, so there's double standards. But that happens with disabilities, is that sometimes people will expect those people to behave or have a little bit of like double standards, and that's not good, really, because everybody should be treated equally. So if he was told to say an extra good morning, or he got his arm grabbed for not saying good morning, but you're not doing that to everybody else, that's just not right, really. And as someone with mental health issues, I face, discrimination like that as well, really, where I'm expected to be apologetic, or when people hear me talk, they'll say, like, you need to shut up, Byron, or you need to lower your voice. But other people are doing the exact same thing or worse, and then they don't and then it doesn't matter if other people do it, so it's just not good when we hold other people to different standards. And I will also say, on top of that, is the other thing too, is that they're also alleging that this teacher has been causing this kid problems for a couple of years. So again, that does happen with people with disabilities. There are people that do take advantage of them and give them bad experiences and try to instigate them or create problems. I've talked about my experience with the 48-hour film project, where I was instigated by the New Haven City producer. I was also instigated by many filmmakers who were bullying me. I was also, when I reported the issues that I've had with the 48-hour film project to the president and other people in the higher ups, they said, we'll get back to you. They didn't get back to me in 6 years until the city producer in New Haven former city producer, she had an issue with me, and then she threatened to press, charges because I kept talking bad about her, saying it's harassment when she's harassed me and manipulate other people to, think that I'm a way worse bad guy, really. So the thing about it is, very, very unfortunately, that there are a lot of situations in life where, there are people with disabilities who get instigated. And, if that's the case, that's true. And then also there are people who lie on people with disabilities to get them into further trouble. That's what they're alleging. That's what this kid with special needs is alleging. That's what his mother and grandmother are alleging. If that's true, that's true. And that is an issue in our country. That's why surveillance cameras are good, or surveillance cameras in the classroom are good. Because I went to school in New Jersey for a year, and that was one of the things that they had was surveillance cameras in the classroom and other things like that. And I think that that's helpful to kind of capture what happens. And if, he's telling the truth or it's a bunch of lies. But the other thing too is that, if it is a bunch of lies and they are defending him and it seems like and it comes off like they're diminishing his behavior, it runs into that other problem, as I said, that there are people who raise children with disabilities and don't teach them accountability, or just say like, oh, he needs to be understood and other things like that. And that just never works really. I knew this girl in my high school who went around lying about being sexually assaulted. And it was one of those things that, there was one of those things where, even after she graduated high school, there were some people that I was friends with where she lied, but she was always like, every man that she's been with did this thing, that thing to her. And, she did get in trouble for it eventually. And there was always like stories about her, like lying, smiling to people, and her mom, and her high-fiving and just trying to, pick out people to take advantage of. And the point of it is that she had mental health issues. She was borderline personality disorder. But the thing about it is that eventually she got punished. But there are parents who support their children's bad behavior to that level. There's also parents who give their kid a disability pass. Like a few weeks ago, what happened in a movie theater was that there was this girl with a disability, and she was making loud incoherent sounds and other things like that when she's watching Moana, and she's told to leave, and her mother's saying that's discrimination really. But the problem is that you need to have a special screening, but because we're always taught that when people have a disability, they're allowed to just misbehave, they're allowed to get special accommodations, and people have to understand their behavior, and that's not the way to raise kids. You have to raise kids with disabilities that they're allowed, that they're living in a society. There is rules, there is consequence for your actions. And as I said, if I work in a psych ward and that's how they handle people in a psych ward, where they either put them in quiet rooms, put them on medication, or strain them to beds if they're super dangerous, if that's just general standard, that's how people with severe disabilities are punished, makes sense to put charges on people with disabilities for their actions really. But also I do understand that there are some cases where you can't do that, and I don't think it is that this is the case really. I understand, as I said, and also as I said, there's ageism. For example, if and there's also racism as well. For example, there was a white guy in his 80s and he was confused and he was in a hospital, taking out his penis, and he was peeing on people and saying, take that, you fiends, because he has dementia. What's going to happen? They're going to probably restrain him and put him in restraints, and that's that really. But if that was, him, that was like an 18-year-old kid that was black, and he had severe autism and other disabilities where he's lost in his head like that, there may be a sense of putting charges on him and getting him arrested and making him a registered sex offender. But you kind of see what I'm saying, two different situations really. So, it was always very, very hard with people with disabilities, and this whole thing about punishment. But I think that punishments do have to happen more than likely, because we can't live in a society with mentally ill people doing whatever the hell they want really. And as somebody who grew up with mental health issues, and I was given that pass at sometimes, and sometimes I was punished, it just doesn't really help you out if you're never punished for your actions, because then it creates a complex of how much can I get away with, and that's not what we want to live in. Because just remember, back, 20, 30 years ago, people with disabilities would go to special schools, not regular schools, and it was a lot like a one flew over the cuckoo's nest. It was either medication, electric shock, or hitting kids back really. So, people with disabilities have to know how to function in the society, and there has to be consequence for their actions. But also, we don't know the extent of, the whole situation because nobody really was there except for a couple of people. But he needs to be punished accordingly, and if that's if there are lies and whatever, really, then those people need to be punished accordingly. So that's all I got to say about this.